China's decision actually changed everything. Russia once again, well, I don't think I can say that word on the internet. And in Iran, of course, as well, yes. And what should we expect from the successor, Ali Khamenei's son, to whom, according to all the information, the power is being transferred? And as I understand it, it's only temporary. And China has given up its beloved friend, the mullah of Iran. The mullahs are cut off and left without help. And I want to start with a small graphic demonstration of Iran's ability to respond with missile strikes to bombings. Well, for now it's much reduced, not yet zeroed out. Take a look at how the fourth day affected their ability to fire.
Take a look at this chart. Look at this diagram. This is a chart showing the intensity of Iranian ballistic missile launches. So, in the first 24 hours of this operation, they launched more than 350 ballistic missiles. On the second day, this number dropped to 175. That is, it was reduced exactly by half. On the third day, this number dropped to 120, and by the fourth day, it decreased even further, reaching 50.
In just 4 days, we have already destroyed 85% of Iran's launchers. And that's even though they were protected by the best air defense systems from Russia and China. We'll talk about China in a minute. So, regarding the drones, which, by the way, Iran sold to Russia in large quantities, as soon as one or several drones are launched, the launch is detected by lasers, first of all. Secondly, by radars. Thirdly, by radio frequency monitors, optics, and electronics. And Israel stops Iranian drones using cyber capture. That is, they intercept control and sometimes send these drones back home, so to speak, with a gift. And they also burn the electronics with combat lasers. This is already being widely used on the front with Hezbollah. This makes the air defense system incredibly cheap. If earlier it was very expensive to shoot down cheap drones, now with the arrival of combat lasers, this is already the third generation of these lasers. From experimental ones, as you can see, they've already moved to the battlefield. And now it has become insanely cheap. That is, it's almost just the cost of electricity. The only problem that remains is the weather. And then interceptor drones are launched. That's why the U.S. is also undergoing rearmament. These joint Israeli-American systems are already on ships. From what I know, it's an American development. And I think they already showed on the news how one of our ships was hitting drones with that very laser beam. I got a bit confused. It's not that simple, not that easy.
Something incredible is happening right now. Both the Democrats and the mainstream media are absolutely stunned. While CNN and MSNBC are running poll after poll trying to convince you that no one supports this war, brand new poll data has just come out that is literally shaking the Democratic establishment. The number of supporters for the operation is epic. It's striking. The intensity is simply astonishing.
The people are enthusiastically supporting the war with Iran. I mean the American people. They demand that first it be quick, and second that there be as few American casualties as possible.
All right, let's dive in here on the... So let's move on to the latest news. In the last 12 hours, the situation has escalated significantly. The U.S. has struck more than 2,000 targets using over 2,000 munitions across Iran, conducting round-the-clock operations. Admiral Brad Cooper from CENTCOM stated that the first 24 hours of this operation were almost twice as large in scale as the shock and awe campaign in Iraq in 2003.
Since the time of Iraq, when it was believed that firepower and the number of strikes were absolutely unmatched, the U.S. has now exactly doubled both the quantity and, most importantly, the quality, that is, the accuracy of strikes on enemy targets. No more do mullahs run through the streets shouting, "Death to America," and no longer does the voice of the muezzin ring out 5 times a day from loudspeakers across all the cities of Iran. America, the devil. No longer do hundreds of thousands of the faithful kneel and ask Allah to destroy the infidel dogs. For some reason, Allah, and it's completely unclear why, allows this to happen, And this is a huge blow to the Ayatollahs, the mullahs, and generally to seriously religious people. He allows the infidel dogs, well, people like us, to destroy the faithful dogs of Islam. In other words, Allah turned out to be real on the side of the Jews and the Americans. Honestly, I could have told them about this a long time ago, but they wouldn't have believed me. There's a saying, trust in Allah, but tie your camel.
That's a 70 to 75% reduction. That's a 70% reduction in their ballistic missile capabilities. So, if the rate of decay remains the same, at least when it comes to basic ballistic missile capabilities, the regime will completely collapse in terms of, again, its ability to retaliate. They were completely deprived of any ballistic missile capabilities, and then what? Well, I mean, you have drone technology. That's certainly very impressive. Russia is using Iranian drone technology quite effectively on the Ukrainian front, but every drone launched by Iran, ironically, becomes a death sentence for Iran itself. At the very moment the booster is launched, it emits an infrared flash, which the American S-bars satellites orbiting 22,000 miles above the Earth detect in real time with accuracy to the second, pinpointing the coordinates. And they transmit them to the strike forces of the US and Israel. It won't make any difference, because the same satellite constellations that tracked hundreds of Iranian missiles and drones during that exchange with Israel in April 2024, the missile exchange with Israel, now they transmit data to the kill chain so quickly that the launcher is destroyed even before the drone reaches its target. And this is all part of what we talked about yesterday, which is increasingly being called the Trump Doctrine, which itself has roots in the growing geopolitical dynamic known as technopolarity. And that's the idea that in the modern, increasingly multipolar world, civilizational power is more and more often defined not just by region, not by the size of your territory, not by the number of your troops, and not by how deep you can dig your bunkers, but by your skill. And just like that, 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 taking into account your walk and now and you, civilization, 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 civilization. But what civilization, civilization? How deep you can dig your bunkers and dig your bunkers and dig, and how deep you can dig your bunkers, 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 how deep you can dig your. But you can, civilization, and it's not just civilization, forcing the enemy to constantly fight uphill against gravity itself.
The headquarters of the U.S. Commander-in-Chief reports successes. Trump says in 3 to 4 weeks we'll clear everything out. During this time, the remaining leadership of Iran will develop a clear understanding that Russia, China, Martians, Allah, no one will come to help them. Maybe they'll decide, like the Ukrainians, to die altogether and not surrender, but I think the Iranian leaders are smarter than the Ukrainian ones, and they'll decide that it's better to be alive and, so to speak, partially in power than to be dead. Or maybe even run away to Russia, but lose most of their family and money in the process. So, well, I mean, to die as a martyr and be glorified among the Shiites. Gareman, if they have such a word, so to speak, in Farsi, it means a hero, a brave hero, a sufferer. So he defeated everyone. Well, I mean, so to speak, you'll be a minister or a deputy minister or, say, a department head, or you'll be a Gareman. I have a feeling that Iranians are not stupid. As I already said, people will choose not to be a Gareman, but something else. That is, life in villas rather than death with a beautiful inscription on the grave. Well, in such a way that 1, 2, 3 wives, well, how many wives do these guys have at home today? Better than 70 virgins in the afterlife? I understand that it's a tough choice, but I suspect they'll make it exactly the way I'm saying now. It seems that all the dirty work in Iran was done by the Israelis. It's important for the Israeli state to take advantage of this once-in-a-century opportunity. I mean, the opportunity to eliminate the biggest threat to its existence. Gentlemen, I lived in Israel for many years. I know what I'm talking about, so to speak. Just a small note. We are resuming posting additional videos for a slightly higher IQ. than what we post on the main channel. And we're making this separate channel a so-called sponsor channel. If you want to take part in this project, then sponsor us through the link below. It will cost from $4 a month. If you subscribe for a whole year at once, it will cost just $3 a month. But you can give more. If someone wants to give more, we won't really resist. Why do we need these funds? For the channel's technical needs, that's all. Those videos are for later. Here are the ones I'll be posting on this channel. We will also appear on the main channel. But sponsors have, so to speak, the right of first viewing, the right of the first night, and the right to the first opinion. And sponsors' recommendations will have an impact on the type of content and the way the content is presented on the channel. So once again, the sponsorship link is below. So, it looks like Lebanon will be cleared of Hezbollah, and Lebanese citizens have always been friends of the Jewish state, and the civil authorities will cooperate with Israel. We know this for sure, because even since the times of let's say my grandfather, my great-grandfather, yes, and my uncles and aunts who lived in Haifa, near Haifa, in kibbutzim, there in the north, and so on and so on. They told me that they had a great relationship with the Lebanese. They used to go there for a couple of days. They said, I already talked about this. Beirut was like that. They called it, the people of Beirut themselves called it Little Paris. So it had, as they say, everything just like in Paris. Just a little less of everything. By the way, the Lebanese government is weaker than Hezbollah, less armed and so on. But while the Israelis are dealing with Hezbollah, they've started arresting those Hezbollah representatives who are present in all their cities, and acting all important. So the new Syria is friendly with the United States of America. Jordan has long wanted an open alliance. The Abraham Accords and the fact that Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain, and others have invested in high tech in the U.S., and this is connected to Israel. High-tech in the U.S., as I hope you understand, it will help create such a multi-friendly situation after the problem with Gaza and the West Bank is solved, of course. However, the Peace Council will make the decisions, which Trump, again, as you know, organized, which has already explained to Europe that we can easily get by without you. And you keep on, as you are doing now, kissing the Muslims' asses. That has nothing to do with us, because, well, that's exactly what it's doing. Let's not even go any further. We will not take part in deciding which part of the ass to lick and kiss. Decide for yourselves. So I hope that we are now witnessing the collapse of the United Nations organization, we call it the UN, and the disgraceful, I hope, closure of this thoroughly corrupt organization. I won't even go to the funeral. That's how little I care about them. Honestly, I should say right away that no one will invite me anyway. Now let's talk about reality and the facts that truly affect geopolitics. China buys about 12% of its oil from Iran at very favorable prices, on very favorable terms. And Iran in turn sends 90% of its to China, of the oil it produces. So for China, Iran is one of its suppliers, a significant one, about 12%. But for Iran, China is a cure for all troubles. It's a gift from God. It's the only real buyer. The relationship between China and Iran is not equal. Just to be clear, these are not equal partners. There's another point. China buys about 40% of its oil from other countries, let's say from the Persian Gulf. That very same oil basin where Iran is located. And all that oil goes through Hormuz, straight to China. If that oil suddenly stops, China will be seriously affected. So 40% from them, 12%, well, about 35, 40% or so. They say that half of China's oil goes through Hormuz. So yes, China is stockpiling oil for months. But shutting down Hormuz is by no means a planned strike against the Chinese economy. Iran and the other Gulf countries, as I already said, account for half of China's oil, and then there's oil from Venezuela as well. In short, no one can guarantee them that oil anymore. You see how the picture starts to change when you add the details. That is, Iran is needed by China, but not critically. But for Iran, it's China. It's critically needed. Well, let's make one more stop. So the Kurds, partially women's battalions. Gentlemen, the Kurdish women's battalions went from Iraq to Iran to cleanse Iran of the aggressive regime that was killing their fellow tribesmen, the Kurds in Iran. Well, so to speak, I said yesterday, I think, 7%, but it's from 7 to 10% according to different sources I looked into. And 20% are Azeris, that is, well, we call them Azerbaijanis, who are also, by the way, subjected to repression by the regime. Although Ali Kumi, so to speak, by nationality, I don't know how to put it, by his ethnic origin, so to speak, he is Azerbaijani.
Indicating that Kurdish...
It is reported that Kurdish forces based in Iraq have launched a ground offensive into Iranian territory. This started already on Monday. We are talking about thousands of Kurdish fighters crossing the border and taking up defensive and offensive, I would say, positions in the mountainous region of Marivan. This is the mountain range right on the border between Iran and Iraq. This is based on information from a representative of the Coalition of Political Forces of Iranian Kurdistan. These thousands of Kurdish fighters, mostly from the PJAK organization, are Iranian Kurds who fled to Iraq, trained specifically for this moment, and have now begun their offensive into Iranian territory.
So the first force capable of filling the power vacuum has entered Iran. The Kurds hate the Ayatollahs. The Kurds want their own state. And if Trump promised to help them organize it, they would form the backbone of the Liberation Army. Plus, as I told you, another 20% of Iran's population are ethnic Azerbaijanis.
Azerbaijan has officially put all its armed
forces on high alert and began deploying troops along its border with Iran, which is about 700 kilometers long. Reports from Baku say that the Ministry of Defense, the State Border Service, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the Ministry of Emergency Situations have all been put on high alert. All military leaves have been canceled. Officers have been recalled from their vacations. Anti-drone defense systems and electronic warfare units have been urgently deployed to the southern border. Additional infantry and armored vehicles have taken up positions. Now, officially, Baku insists that these are purely defensive measures aimed at preventing new stray missiles and drones from entering their territory as the war in Iran intensifies. But anyone who knows this region understands the deeper stakes. There are 15 to 20 million ethnic Azerbaijanis living in Iran. That's actually more than the entire population of the Republic of Azerbaijan. And Iranian forces have long feared an Azerbaijani uprising so much that they chose the now late Ali Khamenei as their supreme leader, precisely because he was Azerbaijani, to help suppress an uprising from this ethnic faction of Iran's population. Azerbaijan is in a close alliance both with Turkey, which is now getting more and more involved, and with Israel. They represent an extremely formidable force.
Now Baku will most likely stage a provocation against itself and, in response, enter Iran to liberate its fellow countrymen. I think Erdogan likes this idea. And a weakened Iran means one less rival for leadership in the Muslim world. But the Kurds and Azerbaijanis mean a loss of territory and population. That would certainly weaken Iran, kind of like the loss of Donbass and the weakening of Ukraine. And to completely change Iran's policy, you need an army that would take the positions of the IRGC. That is, to occupy the capital and several major cities, and would restore order, or rather take order in the country into its own hands. Otherwise, the same thing will happen as in Iraq after the Americans went in under Bush. They went in, and that was it. And then what? Who knows what happens next? There is no plan at all. Now, after we've painted this picture, let's go back to China, its role and its decisions about whether or not to participate in the conflict.
Every American ship, every American aircraft, every American ship, every American aircraft, every American missile involved in the Middle East is something that's being diverted from the Taiwan Strait. Iran has been a beneficiary of the Belt and Road Initiative and infrastructure projects funded by Beijing. And Beijing has enjoyed most favored nation status with the only country controlling the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's flows pass every day. Now you can understand why Iran felt, frankly, so invincible, why they were reportedly so self-confident. In their negotiations with Steve Wyckoff and Jared Kushner, they literally boasted that they controlled about 460 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, which, according to them, was enough. They actually said that this was enough to produce 11 nuclear bombs. Behind them stood the largest army on the planet in Beijing. A regime that, as they were convinced, would protect them with oil purchases, missiles, and diplomatic cover as soon as the situation heats up. In their view, this 60% stockpile combined with China's support meant that they could provoke Trump at the negotiating table with impunity. They could destabilize the region with drones and their proxies and still sleep soundly at night, absolutely certain that the dragon in the east would never allow the hammer to truly fall. And what's even worse, reports began to emerge that China was planning to arm Iran with CM-302 supersonic anti-ship missiles, as well as its DF-17 hypersonic glide missiles. Of course, this sparked a strong international protest, but China had no intention of backing down.
Both China and Iran are two fully independent countries with complete sovereignty, and there is no international law that prohibits China and Iran from conducting commercial operations with each other. And China produces some of the most advanced and sophisticated missiles of all kinds, and this is absolutely right for both China and Iran to mutually assess their capabilities and engage in any economic and commercial transactions they wish to undertake, including those related to such military missiles. And I believe that the whole world should be made aware that both China and Iran will have the full sovereign right to conduct such commercial transactions with each other, and no country should pretend to be surprised.
So again, it was clear why they were so arrogant. However, you know what they say about pride. What Iranian officials apparently failed to consider is that, despite all this Iranian dependence on China, China was not equally dependent on Iran.
It has already been discussed that for Iran, China is the buyer of 90% of their oil, while for China, Iran is the supplier of 12% of their oil. But at the same time, Iran wants to block Hormuz, through which, as I already said, 40% additionally goes to China and another 40% of oil from other countries. So what is more important for China? The 12% supply, which they can easily replace by finding it elsewhere, or the 40% which no one can replace? Take a guess. It seems the mullahs misunderstood something.
So when the bombs started falling on Tehran, and in response, Iranian troops began launching missiles, that's when the regime turned to Beijing for those very same CM-302 supersonic anti-ship missiles so they could effectively close off, completely block the Strait of Hormuz. And then Beijing suddenly had to realize that it needed to make its choice. Is it willing to risk 50% of its oil supplies from the entire Gulf region just to protect those 13% from Iran? Or does it quietly back off, rhetorically condemn the violence, and then more or less look the other way? And to the complete and utter shock of the regime, when they turned around expecting to see the red dragon covering their backs, what Beijing had just decided changed absolutely everything. Everything.
Of course, China doesn't want to look like a traitor, but it also doesn't want to end up looking foolish, cutting, as they say, the branch it's sitting on. And China turned its policy in the direction pointed by the money.
In a stunning turnaround. Completely unexpectedly, the official representative of China completely denied the credibility of the report that China had allegedly agreed to sell Iran modern supersonic anti-ship missiles of the CM-302 model. And he emphasized that they definitely will not do this. So this was such a striking turn of events, and it made it absolutely clear that China will not get involved in this. It definitely isn't going to go to war with America over Iran, over 13% of their oil. They condemned the strikes. They made statements about sovereignty. But when it came time to actually support Tehran with real weapons, the very weapons they had promised, China backed down.
Congratulations, gentlemen. Iran will not become the new Serbia, the start of another world war. Everyone abandoned Iran, and in a very harsh way. And what about the poor and at the same time very rich Ayatollahs? The family of that harmless old man Ali has dozens of houses and palaces all over the world. And when I say house, I don't mean a small crooked two-story house. So what should they do now? Allah abandoned them, Russia abandoned them, their Muslim brothers abandoned them, and now the Chinese communists have abandoned them too. No one wants to protect them from the little Satan Israel and the great Satan USA, who have joined forces to punch the mullah in the face. And by the way, they are doing it very professionally and very successfully.
We know very well what Iran was planning. They learned a lot, Dana, from that 12-day war. And from the very first day, they expected to deliver a massive retaliatory strike against Israel and our U.S. bases with missiles and drones. But even that they couldn't do. Remember, on the very first day, the message from Central Command and from the Israelis was a much weaker response than they expected. And this was due to the disruption of the entire chain of command, as well as the fact that we struck those targets so powerfully on that first day, literally depriving them of the ability to return fire. So we are moving at a very good pace. Israel is moving to a new phase of the operation. We will continue to seize weapons. And you will see how we do it. Ballistic missiles, drones, the fleet, and we will also systematically seize them. If you are involved in the production of any weapon system on the territory of Iran, then that is our target. And we are going to destroy absolutely all such targets. We don't want them to have anything left in the end, not only in terms of what they can use to fire, but also so that they can't produce anything new at all. So what will the Israelis do? They will still focus on some of these targets, but what will be their main priority? It's the organization itself. They aim to create conditions for the regime's collapse, which will soon begin in earnest. They have done a tremendous job, of course, together with us in eliminating key leadership figures, and this will continue. But what will they systematically take away? The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and its capabilities. These are the people, the organization, the facilities, the infrastructure that supports them. In other words, networks, technologies, communication systems, all of that. The same goes for the Basiji militia, which suppresses people. The same goes for the intelligence and security forces that suppress people. The same applies to police infrastructure that oppresses people. Tehran has been hit by more than 1,000 munition strikes in the past couple of days, and hundreds more are expected in the next 24 hours. But this also extends to all the provinces, because in these provinces, as we've seen, when these protest movements spread to other cities, they were met by security forces and police infrastructure. The infrastructure that took to the streets and suppressed them, those security forces and infrastructure will be eliminated. This is a systematic reduction of the entire infrastructure that does what? It supports the regime.
So the regime is left alone. It seems that Ali Khamenei's son will become this very successor, apparently for a very short time, who will try to drown any resistance in blood but stay in power. So, well, just like Bashar Assad, yes, so to speak, he was the successor in Syria. This is exactly what the US and Israel are trying to prevent. And now it all depends on whether there will be a force that will take power into its own hands on the streets and squares of Tehran and other major cities of Iran. But this is already the task of the Iranian people. Let us wish them all the best in liberating their country from Islamism, from fanaticism, and from bloody dictatorship. Friends, subscribing and hitting the bell helps spread our videos far and wide. I've done my part. I've recorded it. Now it's your turn to spread the word. Goodbye. See you soon. To be continued.